Hello, this is lesson 513, 5th grade, page 188. We are solving fraction division problems today. And this lesson has a lot in common with lesson 510, which I've already uploaded a video on here. Looks like this. Now, on page 182 for 510, we were busy finding fractions of fractions. 1/3 divided by 2/5, or 1/3 times 2/5. We found out they meant the same thing. We're going to have a very similar lesson today with one small difference. You're going to notice instead of dividing a fraction by a fraction, we're going to be using a fraction divided by a whole number. I'll show you what I mean. First, let's read the instructions. For problems 1 and 2, write a number model using a letter for the unknown. Solve, showing your solution strategy and representations or drawings. Summarize your work with a division number model. Check your answer using multiplication and write a number sentence to show how you checked. Cool, we can do that. Let's get right to it. 2 students equally share 1/4 of a stick of clay. How much of the stick will each student get? Okay. There's a few ways to tackle this one. To keep it simple, I'm only going to show you one way. It's going to be a drawing. So first, I'm going to draw a really basic picture of a stick of clay. I'm going to make it big enough that I can split it, because we know that dividing is basically just a bunch of splitting. So here's my stick of clay. And I can tell from my story, we're not just, equally sharing the entire stick. We're only sharing 1/4 of a stick, also known as a quarter. So the first thing we want to do is split our clay into quarters or fourths. So it doesn't have to be exact, but I'm going to go ahead. I know that when we're talking about fourths, there's going to be something split right down the middle. Oh, that's really bad. That's almost like 60%. We can still use it. We're going to do one down the middle, one 3/4 of the way, and then another one, basically half of a half. So half, then half of a half, and half of a half, and that should give you 4 pieces. So to begin with, I'm going to bust out my colors here. Same ones I used in 510. I'm going to shade the only part of the clay that we're actually going to deal with, and that's 1/4 of it. So they're only sharing 1/4 of a whole stick. They're not using any of this. They're just using 1 out of 4. So I'm going to shade in Sharpie, and it's going to bleed through to the other side, I found out. So if you have colored pencil, or if you just want to use a darker shade of pencil or whatever, I would suggest that over marker, especially Sharpie. Now, we've split it into fourths, so this is what we're going to be using. But we're not done. Obviously, we can't just say, oh, they're sharing 1/4, so the answer is 1/4. No, we have to split that up. How many people or how many students are sharing this 1/4? And if you reread the problem, you'll notice we have 2 students who want to share this piece here. So I'm going to ask you right now, how many ways do we need to split this 1/4 up? How many people want to share it? You got it. 2 people. So you're going to take this 1/4. This is going to walk us right into our number model. We're going to take this 1/4, and basically what we want to do is we want to split it 2 ways. So we're going to do 1/4 divided by 2. Our divisor here is going to be 2. And I'm going to use my little cursive A as my unknown variable. So how can we split this up into 2 pieces? And you might already be looking at the picture saying, well, I know. I'm just going to go ahead and split it right up, right in the middle. And today I say, cool. In fact, just so we get the whole picture here, run that line all the way down. this is going to help us with our answer. I'll show you how in a minute. So we've taken this 1/4, split it into 2 pieces. So now we want to know how much one of those people will get, and you can just pick one side here, and I'll pick the bottom side. One of those students is going to get this down here. Coloring marker over marker. That's really going to bleed through. So the question now is, how much will each student get? So let's just look at this one guy. He's going to get this one piece here, right? So that's going to be our numerator. He's going to get one piece. But out of how much total? How many pieces do we have now? You need to look at the entire picture. I know we had fourths before, but when we did that split, do you notice what happened here? We created a lot more pieces. And in fact, we created twice as many pieces. So we had 4 before, and if you count now, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So now our new denominator here is going to be 1/8. So all told, we have just discovered that 1/4 divided by 2 equals 1/8. Okay, so our last thing we need to do is we need to check our work. So in order to do that, we're going to go ahead and, just like you can with any multiplication problem, we're going to take our answer, which is 1/8, and we're going to multiply him by 2. And since we've been talking about multiplying fractions by fractions, I'm going to turn 2 into a fraction. And the fraction form of 2 is 2/1. You can do that with any whole number. If you want to turn any whole number into a fraction, just put them over 1. That's the same thing. So we know that 1 times 2, we just multiply across here. 1 times 2 is 2. And 8 times 1 is 8. And you might be saying, hey, 2/8 is not the same here. But in fact, we can reduce this, and it reduces right down to 1/4. Now I'm going to skip over this, the whole reduction thing, in the interest of time. If you are interested in learning more about reducing fractions, I do know that you will be expected to reduce in the future as you move on to middle school. I would recommend literally YouTubing how to reduce fractions. If you really insist, I could even make a video myself, but I think there is a ton of information out there already. But I'm not going to require it now. I'm going to focus on the essentials. Do you know how to set a problem up here? And how do we split a fraction into multiple pieces? Just a pro tip for number 2. You'll notice right away we're not splitting into 2 pieces this time. You can in fact find out how many ways we need to split right away. So number 2 will be a little bit different. You'll be dealing with more than just 2 splits. Okay, do I have time to, yeah, okay. Looks like we're coming up on 9 minutes here. Sorry about that. That's a little, this is a little bit of a longer lesson than we've had in recent days. While I've got you, I'm going to swing over to the blue whale. Now this will almost be what we call spiral review, where we cover something and then we move on, and then you're going to see it pop back up again later in the text. So we've done graphing before. We've done this. I'm going to spare you the details. I know you can read this on your own later. Basically, we're going to be graphing how much a blue whale eats over a given time period. We're going to be dealing with krill, and spoiler alert, they eat literally tons of krill. So we know that ordered pairs, I guess I'll crank you through this one real quick. You know that we're really just carrying things over to 7. This is our x-axis, our y-axis, and it tells you as much right here, x and y. 414, and 621. The only thing I wanted to point out on page 189, when you graph, I'm going to take these 3 points and I'm going to place them down here. When we graph, let me see if I can move my camera just a little bit without knocking it off its... struggling. When we graph, there we go. 2, 7, 2. That means x first. You can notice there's an x-axis right here. So you go over 2, up 7, over 4, up 14, and then over 6 and up 21. The only thing I want you to keep in mind, well, make that 2 things. Number 1, do not freestyle your line. Don't just use freehand to make your line. I repeat, do not use freehand to make your line. It will be crooked. It will be inaccurate. You need to use a straight edge. That can be a ruler if you have one. If you don't have a ruler, you can just as well use the side of a book, the side of a laptop computer, the side of a plastic organizing bin. I'm just looking around my desk right now. Literally anything that has a super straight edge. Okay, that's number 1. Use a straight edge. Number 2, I want you to make sure that you're not just connecting these 3. Don't just go from point 1 to point 3. You're going to need to run that straight edge line all the way through. You want to find a line that's going to, I'm going to use this temporarily, that not only hits these 3 points, but also that line will have to continue all the way to the top of your graph and all the way to the bottom here, which will probably be right about here at the edge at 0. Okay. Trust me on that one. I think you're going to have an extended line to figure out the answers to 1, 2, 3, and 4. And in fact, my last note on this page for 1 and 2, your answer may be in between. It may not be exact. So when they're asking about how many metric tons of krill does a blue whale eat in a day, you can give me, oh, it's about blank. But you can also give me, it's between blank and blank. Okay, so probably will not be exact, is my guess. All right, any other questions, comments? You know the drill by now.